Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Liverpool Academic and Clinical Research Society Talks. I'm Christian Anderson and I am the conference chairperson of this evening. And today we're going to have 3 lectures or talks, all on academic medicine and cancer research. And I'm all very glad that you've come live here today. The speakers are absolutely fantastic and we're all looking forward to hearing the wisdom that they will share with us. So thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce the Reverend Dr David Taylor. Can you just click?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be asked to come and do this, and welcome to all those of you I can see face to face, and all those of you that are at the other end of Longwise. I'm David Taylor. I've been at the medical school here in Liverpool for 35 years, and in that time I've done all sorts of research. My research at the moment is really in sociology and ethnography. I started life doing neurophysiology and a lot of bench research and things like that. And in the middle period of my life, I was very involved in prescribing errors research, and I was one of the people responsible for the recent General Medical Council study on prescribing errors. So that's me, and I'm just going to talk briefly about this business of pursuing a career in academic medicine. Before we start, there is this thing about I don't mind. What I'm going to say is based on experience, but actually there is something very real about the evidence base, and there are 2 books that have particularly informed the way we think about these things. One is to go back to the 1960s. A guy called William Perry in the States was interested in what people did when they were at university and what made them think and how their way of looking at the world changed. And he did a study, and he showed very convincingly, this was in the 1960s, he showed very convincingly that people move, when they go into university, they have a very clear idea of right and wrong, and they know that whoever is the teacher or the textbook actually has got the right answer. And they're expecting people to give them the right answer. And they're convinced there's a right and wrong answer to every question. By the time they leave university, they realise that there isn't always a right or a wrong answer, that the answer is very dependent on the context, and actually the person who knows the best may not be the person standing in front of them. It may be one of their colleagues, or it may be somebody that they know down the street. And that was fine, and it was a very well researched and very well funded piece of work. And he did very well out of it, including getting a large number of PhD students. One of his PhD students, Mary Belenky, when she got her PhD, said, this isn't the whole story. And the reason it wasn't the whole story is the bit that I haven't told you, which is that William Perry was working in Harvard, and it was the 1960s, and all of the people in his study were male school leavers from affluent families, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. That's all they were. And Mary Belenky said that actually doesn't describe anything like a tenth of the people that I know. So she said, I'm going to repeat this study. And she went to work with she had a number of friends, and they went to work in a place, also all over the place, but the study that fascinates me most was the one that she did in a women's education commune in Harlem, which is as different from Cambridge, Massachusetts, as you could conceivably get. And the interesting thing is that she actually found the same thing for a group of people, but they were outliers. And on one end of the scale, you had the people who didn't think they even had a right to know any answers. They were the silent students. The other end of the scale, you've got the people who are the co-creators of knowledge, the people who said, you know, I know enough to be able to add to this. I can say something. And actually, when you have your patients, I can guarantee within a fortnight of you starting, one of your patients will turn around to you and say, I don't know, doctor, what do you think? But equally, I can guarantee that probably within a fortnight, certainly within 6 months, somebody's going to come into your clinic with a ream of papers they printed off the internet, absolutely convinced that they know all the answers, and they're just coming to you really for confirmation and get it straight. So they exist, those classifications exist. So we've got Perry, who said, well, you move from a phase where you go through university, you go from a phase from duality through to recognising duality, right and wrong, through to recognising there is such a thing as complexity and things are true in context or not. And then you've got Mary Belenky, who said, well, yes, but at the one end of the scale, you've got the silent student. At the other end of the scale, you've got the student who's a co-creator of knowledge. And it takes time to develop along that continuum. And there are ways that we can make it happen. There are ways we can make it happen easier. So, I say that because if you're thinking about academic medicine, you need to ask yourself who we're looking for, what the standards might be, what the criteria might be. And I would say that you need people who recognise complexity, that understand that there isn't always a right or a wrong answer. I'd say you need people who are co-creators, who are prepared to say, you know, I know that, I've seen this, I can join the dots between those and I can say something that nobody else has said before. So you need to be creative, you need to be inquiring, you need to be patient, and you need to be persistent. All those of us, those of us that have really cut our teeth on research know that business about patience and persistence is really central. There are times when it feels as though you're never going to get any further forward, and it feels like everything is stacked up against you and everything's going wrong. You're just going to take a really deep breath and go, do you know, we'll get there in the end. And I can remember my supervisor, because I was having a really bad time in the lab, and I was saying words that I wouldn't want broadcast. And my supervisor just came up to me and he said, if you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. If you can't stand it, then just go. Of course, I might have walked out then, but I didn't. I stayed, and I thought, no, it's got a point. So, complexity, you've got to recognise complexity, co-creator of knowledge. You've got to be creative, you've got to be inquiring, you've got to want to know more. You've got to be patient and persistent. And there are many other qualities that you need to do research, but you can fill those dots in for yourself. So that's who should be involved in academic medicine. The next question is why. I'm going to simply go through the journalist's key points of who, why, what, where, when, how, and all of those things. So the why is because we, as a health economy, as a health service, and as a university, need professional researchers who are doctors. I mean, there's nothing wrong with professional researchers who aren't, but actually some things need people who genuinely are doctors to do the work. So professional researchers and doctors, we need them so they can create new knowledge, and if they've got clinical experience, they're more likely to be able to create knowledge that we can use in the clinical field. We need them actually to be able to false understandings. I've long ago lost track of the things that I was taught as an undergraduate, that nowadays we teach something completely different. The world has changed, science has changed, medicine has changed. So you need people who can create new knowledge, you need to be able to correct false understandings, we need people who can develop the discipline, take it forward in a way that people like me and people in my generation can no longer envisage. If I'm sort of looking, I may be doing you a disservice, but I would be really surprised if most of you guys don't have 30 to 40 years career ahead of you. I can't imagine how much medicine has changed in my 35 years. I guess the other side, It's just unbelievable. So we need people who've got the background, the skills, the knowledge, the excitement, the enthusiasm, just to make the discipline move forward and create new disciplines. And we need you to guide the next generations. And that's a real job. And all of that sort of goes alongside this business of balancing clinical services. Understandings I've long ago lost track. Thank you. Balancing clinical services with pushing back the boundaries of what is known. I'm not quite sure how I ended up talking to myself there. This is going to be one of those infinite loops from which we will never escape. So balance clinical services whilst pushing back the boundaries of what is known. There is people here can't see the slide, so I'll try and describe what's happening as best I can without using it. We do know how people learn. There's a lot we know about how people learn, and I raise this really because there are some things that I think we need to emphasise. Everything starts here in the West with existing knowledge. Something happens, a dissonance, so everything starts with existing knowledge. There is a task or an event or an observation which provides dissonance. In other words, a recognition that existing knowledge isn't the whole story. So you get from existing knowledge through to dissonance. The next thing is that you observe the dissonance and reflect upon it. You elaborate and refine explanations for that, allows you to develop new concepts, organise things into a story that makes sense, determine what you're going to do about it, reflect and consolidate. Now, without the visual cues, that's quite difficult, but I can give you a very simple clinical example, and it's a trivial clinical example. Imagine yourself as a GP. Somebody walks into your surgery, you get up, you walk towards the door. Before they've even sat down, or you've gone to get them from the waiting room, before they've even sat down, you've recognised that, for instance, they're short of breath. You recognise the dissonance, that's what you do. They're short of breath. Okay, you say they're short of breath. Before they sit down, you've already gone, right, short of breath. You'll be short of breath for two basic reasons. Either the blood isn't getting through to the lungs, or the gases aren't getting through to the blood in the lungs. And any explanation is going to be a combination of those two, or a refinement of those two. So you've elaborated a number of possibilities, and you, depending on the experiences you've had, you've probably already listed a whole bunch of things in your head that would explain that. So that elaboration you refine, because people can be short of breath if they've been harpooned, but you'd notice if a patient was walking in with a harpoon through their chest. Okay, so you refine that one out, and that allows you to organise things into a story that makes sense. And that in turn allows you, and that's the point at which you've got to as the patient sits down. And then all of the conversations you have with the patient, all of the tests that you do, all of the measurements you order, and so on and so forth, are related to the fact you've noticed the dissonance, you've elaborated the possible explanations for that, you've refined it, you've organised it into a story that makes sense, and then you're in a position to test it. Get the results back, you consolidate your knowledge, and then you can reflect on the whole process. And actually, I mean, although that's a clinical case that I've given, it describes what happens in real science all the time. When we're doing our work that we call research, it's because there's been some dissonance, there's been something there that's niggled, that's made us wonder, that's made us question, and you build as many possible explanations for this. And I mean, I'm a firm believer in the fact that you actually, having built the number of explanations, you spend your time trying to prove things wrong. Any idiot can prove something right. You only need one piece of data to prove something wrong. And it's really go for trying to disprove. You may have your pet theory, but fire at it, really shoot at it, because that's the way you'll demonstrate that it works or not. There's a number of things that are important in that shape what we want out of our researchers, and that would be, well, the first thing is stage of development. It is possible to do academic research, to do research when you're in the early stages of duality and believing there's right or wrong. And I mean, all of us start there, but I think that the skill for new people is finding supervisors that help them see the complexity and help them recognise the dissonance. I think that's the skill. And we all know that some supervisors are completely inert and just say, yeah, well, come to me and when you're finished. And we also know there are some supervisors who are just on your case all the time, and they're just as bad, to be honest. But you need somebody who is prepared. So just look at that. What's the sense of that reading? Why does it sound like that? Why does it look like that? And so, being at the stage of development, recognising the stage of development you're at and being prepared to move is part of the story. Practically speaking, you're going to start by joining an ongoing project. There aren't very many people who invent a research project on their own. I had a lad come to me about 3 weeks ago who did have a project that he'd invented on his own. That's really, really unusual. So practically speaking, you start by joining an ongoing project. Which one depends on your burning desires. And if you can, you're going to spend time doing research. It wants to be on something that interests you. It doesn't really want to be on something you find a drag. There's always a trade-off. So if you've got a really good supervisor who you think is really inspiring and they give you a tedious project to start with, that may just be the pill you've got to bite on. But where you can, go for your burning desires. So start by joining an ongoing project, something that interests you, and of course the other thing that it depends what is opportunity. So sometimes people say, do you know, yeah, it'd be lovely, but I haven't got anything on the go at the moment. And you just got to decide then whether you want to mark time and wait, or whether how you approach that. I had somebody last week who said, I want to do such and such with you. I said, well, I haven't got time to do that. I've got 3 other projects on. I haven't got time to do that. But you could do it with such and such. You could go and do that with them. Or if you wanted to do it like this, you could do it with them, or you could do it with me. And so there's a choice. And don't be afraid to ask, because we're all of us really keen to help people start. So opportunity is one of the things that makes a difference. The drivers make a difference. The drivers are these things like dissonance, elaboration, organisation and consolidation. That does make a difference. And being able to pick those things up. And I can think some of the research projects I've done have been driven by dissonance. Some of the research projects I've done have been driven by a desire to refine. Having done the elaboration, the research has been based at actually refining which one of those explanations is appropriate and correct. I've done other research, and that, for instance, is the stuff that we were doing with the General Medical Council about prescribing errors, where really what we're trying to do is get behind the story of why it is that F2 doctors make more prescribing errors than F1 doctors. I mean, I know that they sign it off, and actually that's part of the answer, because for an F1 there's always somebody there that can check, but they also are in the habit of trying to get it right, whereas the F2 doctors, particularly in some of the disciplines where there's not a lot of support from physicians, they are much more likely to make prescribing errors because there isn't a support mechanism. A place where you get fewest prescribing errors are places like paediatrics, things like that. And our professor of paediatrics, who's now retired, used to have the general rule of writing a prescription and taking it to a junior member of his team and saying, can you just check that for me? And if you've got the professor of paediatrics going to a new nurse and saying, can you just check that for me? The whole way that the place looks at those sort of issues changes, and it makes a difference. I don't personally bother with research that consolidates things because I haven't got the time or the energy or the inclination. I let other people do that. But there is an honourable tradition of people who do the tying up of the knots, but I'd much rather move on to the next exciting project. Reflection is important. There are two sorts of reflection. There's reflection in action, so the whole business about thinking about things as you're doing them, thinking about how the data that you're obtaining matches your expectations, or ideally doesn't match your expectations. But there is a place for the bigger reflection. Typically this is what you do when you end up doing your thesis for your PhD or your MD, but it is something I try and get my guys to do really quite early in the day, and that's just every now and again to take a step back and say, well, are we doing this in a way that's going to make sense? Is this the best way of doing it? Could we do this in a different way? So those things do make a difference, and again, you need a supervisor or a friend who can do that with you, because what you're looking for, and this is exactly the same as in the clinical world or in the educational world, is actually looking for feedback. So we've looked at the sort of person that should be doing, that might want to do research and have a career in academic medicine. We've looked at the sort of things that they might want to do, and I know you've got people coming later that are going to talk through a series of different approaches. The next thing is when should you do it? And I would say the best time to start research is as early as possible. Absolutely as early as you possibly can. As soon as you understand enough to be able to ask a question, do that. And there isn't really another answer. So how do you go about it? You are inquiring and a co-creator. You have got the opportunity. There are people there that you're interested in. It's as early in your career as you can make it, and that's fine. So how do you do it? I'd say the first thing is to become known. That makes a huge difference. Just make sure that people know who you are. You've actually got a head start there. People, we know you're coming. In fact, you can tell that, so we'll hide behind. No, I didn't say that. But it's become known, become a face that's recognised. Little things like saying hi. You know, I bet you thought I wouldn't notice you doing that, wouldn't you? As if by magic. Become known, become informed, find out what's going on, find out what people are doing, find out what's interesting. This sort of organisation is exactly the right thing for that. You get to know who's tuned in, who's doing things, and so on and so forth. Do well. I know that's a really boring thing to say, but there isn't really a substitute. There isn't really a substitute for actually doing well in your work. Partly because you don't, if you want to go about a research career, you can't afford to be struggling. You need to be comfortable and know what you're doing. Build a CV, because there's a lot of people that want to, there are a lot of people who want to do research, and so you need to have a CV that makes you different from the other people. I don't think that it makes a huge difference to be chairman of this or president of that. It's much more about the things that you do, much more about the stuff that you do and get involved with. We have in Liverpool, but most places have got something similar. We have the Scholars Programme, so people who decide really at the end of first year that there is a particular area that they want to work out. Thank you. there's a particular area that they want to work in, but and so they effectively become adopted by a department, and that's lovely for those people that get onto those, but we have more people who want to do that than we could possibly give places to. So it's not the be all and end all, but if you can get involved in one of those sort of incorporation type programs, then do. If you can't, but you find you're doing something that's interesting, then talk to the person you're working with, talk to your supervisor and say, actually I'm not on the Scholars Programme, but I'm actually quite interested in doing this. And so for instance, I haven't got anybody working with me on the Scholars Programme because I know that I'm going to be retiring before they could actually make full use of that. But I've got several people who say, well, can we just carry on working on this? Can we carry on talking about this? And yeah, I mean, I suppose I've got 5 students giving papers next year. So it's certainly possible. Intercalate, that's really part of making yourself different. It's going to be a lot easier to do research if you have intercalated. We've got the intercalation as NSAMR, which is good here in Liverpool, but there are many others on MSc in medical education reasons. But intercalating is good, makes you different, gives you more background knowledge. Do extracurricular research. You're not restricted to the things that are in the programme. And actually, I've just come back from a research conference in Romania, which was entirely about medical students who've done research outside their programme, but they've just done research. And some of them have gone into research labs and they've just gone and said, can I come and work in your research lab for 5 hours a week? I'll do anything. Clean the glassware, I'll do anything. But people who've just got involved like that, we've got others who've actually done some really good publishing research and of course publish. It's hard to publish and it's hard to publish something that people are prepared to read, but it always helps to have publications. That's the end of my slides. So I'll answer any questions. I shall, just while we're here, I'll just go back to that model, just for those of you that hadn't remembered it from earlier times. Okay, well, that's the model I was using. Task, stage of development, so that's when you're in a state of duality, believe there's a right and wrong answer to every question, or whether you're happy with the complexity, or you're a co-creator. You've got recognising the dissonance, realising things are not as they appear to be in the textbooks, being able to elaborate explanations for those and refine them, being able to organise them into stories that make sense, reflecting on how the data fits, and being able to consolidate it into something that becomes real knowledge and reflect upon how the whole system works. And I'll answer any questions at all. Thank you.
To making networks to get into research studies and so forth, how would you sort of go about that? Would you visit conferences or establish contacts by email and things like that? How do people make networks?
You do all of these things. I certainly go to conferences. I think if you can, the problem is that conferences are quite expensive, but certainly try and get to conferences. See if you can get one of the, if there's an area that's interesting to you, then go along to the department where most of the researchers, or the research institute where most of that research is done, and say, I'm really interested in this. Is there a conference coming up that's not too far away that I can just go to and find out more about it? And say, have you got any research away days going on? You know, anything like that. And I guarantee if you go to a research institute or a research focused department and say, I'm really interested in this, I'd like to find out more, I'd like to really see what was going on, we will all just bend over backwards and say, oh, that's a really good idea. Why don't you come to this? Why don't you come to that? There's some things you won't be able to come to. And I can promise you that some of the things you'll go to and they'll go straight over your head. And rest assured that that's the same for the rest of us. Sometimes we go to a conference, even one in which you can be a plenary speaker at one of these conferences, and somebody says something, give a talk, and you think, do you know, I haven't got a clue what he was talking about. But actually, in the bar over over a couple of small dry sherries, you decide that you do understand what they were talking about and you get interested. And that's actually how we got involved, because how we built the team that the GMC funded for the prescribing error thing, because we'd been to something, we were very despondently sitting in the bar afterwards thinking, oh, what on earth is going on here? And it just happened to be 4 of us round the table saying, I know what we could do though. So yeah, but networking is crucial, it really is, it's a big deal.
So, if the research that you want to do, if you think you found something you're really interested in, but they don't do it in the really local area, say Liverpool, how would you, in your experience for a student, go about contacting or finding the right people to then work with?
It's quite hard. I mean, part of it's the networking story. So certainly I've had people from elsewhere who've come up to me at a conference and said, actually, I'd quite like to do some work on that. Okay. So part of it's just through going and buttonholing people, but also through contacts here. So, you know, I mean, if somebody wanted to do, let's think of an example. If somebody was worried about how you measured stress in medical students and how you coped with that, they could do it here, or I could say, well, you know, have you got a Scots baseline, because I can send you up to my friend Jen in Aberdeen, or, you know, are you more London, in which case why don't you go and talk with Anne down at King's, and we know a lot of people. You can usually get somebody involved. Or just persuade somebody that want to do it here in Liverpool. So, I mean, they've got to be... If they've got enough time to do that, I'd be really impressed. I'm probably slightly dismayed. But, yeah.
So, assuming then you do find someone in another city, then how would, the one question of funding, I suppose, at time, how would you go about working with them?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the School of Medicine here has got a small budget, but it's only a small budget. So it wouldn't do many sequential visits. So you'd be in the business really of seeing what you could do by do remotely, and then saying, well, you know, is there any chance I can come and stay for a week or something and do that sort of thing? I've got some people coming over from China to do some research next year, and we're having to put them up in student houses. They've got no money. We haven't got the money that they would need. Their university happens to be paying for their airfare. We're just going to go around the Chinese students here and say, we've got some guys from Guangzhou, you really want to give them a hand, don't you? And actually people do. Just as when I lived in Germany and somebody said, I need to come to Germany. So, come on, you can come and stay with us for a month.
So the facilitator sort of person would usually help with that. It wouldn't be so much time.
The university will do whatever it can. We don't have vast amounts of money. We've got very little money, but we do have a lot of contacts, and there's usually a way round.
Question. In terms of the skills a researcher should have, do you have like sort of perspective on like what skills that we should take forward into research, and how it would sort of present us as a worthy, candidate for a research team? They go to the paper, like for example, if we can do statistics, or we should be able to do lab work, or we should be able to critically analyse stuff.
You have to build up a portfolio, and I mean, actually, anybody who's any good at statistics will be snaffled by any research group, because there are universities no longer provide a statistics service. When I started in the game, you'd just phone up a statistician and they give you the answer. They don't; those people don't exist anymore. It's not there. So, if you've got a bunch of skills, then that's it, and develop the skills you've got. So, say, well, actually, what could I do? First year student. What can I do as a first year student? Well, what you could do is get involved with the team that was doing a systematic review. Because you'd learn the literature, you'd learn how to do the searching, you'd learn how to analyse the papers, and so on and so forth. I chair the Liverpool Best Evidence in Medical Education International Collaborating Centre, and we've got 3 projects on the go at the moment. There's always room for somebody who's prepared to sit down and crunch through some papers and work out what it is the papers think they're saying. And we've got 3 Cochrane units within the university where the same, depending on your particular area. The cardiologists have got one, the paediatrics have got one, neuro have got one. Just get involved in one of those, because we're actually always willing to have people who are just prepared to. I'll read those 10 papers and I'll extract the important information for you. Go do. Give you a beer.
But how come we don't have these statisticians anymore?
The cynic in me says because they can earn so much more money working for the government. All of my friends who were statisticians ended up working for the government one way or another. Plus, this day and age with packages like SPSS and things like that, actually, statistics are very easy. You have to be logical about which statistic you use, but once you know what statistic you're using, you just put the numbers in and it happens. Whereas you used to have to sort of sit down and work through multiple stages. There's a wonderful series of books by a guy called Andy Field, who teaches statistics, and he can make anything seem absolutely clear. There's a small book called PDQ Statistics by a guy called Jeff Norman, and he's really quite brutal. He says, don't try that, it's a waste of time. Mostly you want to use this. And he also says hardly ever use a t-test because it's hardly ever the right test. It's the easiest one, it's the one that everybody does. My phone will do it for me, but doesn't make it the right one.
So what music applies for students generally? Because I asked some researchers, and they say some projects like case report, case series, or even like letters to the editor, things like that, it can be a bit shorter and therefore more suitable for students compared to like systematic review or meta-analysis. Because if for meta-analysis and systematic review, if you've not done research properly.
If you're going to do a proper systematic review, you need to do that as part of a team, to be honest. I can't, you'd have to be insane to want to do it on your own. I'd say that to a really hard-bitten academic, because actually, I haven't got none of the reviews that I'm doing at the moment, I've got fewer than 4 people working on them. And we pair up. And so there's always somebody who says, nah, or you missed this one, and so on and so forth. But no, case reports and things like that, that's fine. Once you've got your discipline that you're interested in, you know what you're doing. There are many vehicles for filing case reports and things like that. And provided you've got permission from the trust to use the data in that way, it's a really good way.
What about letters to the editor? I've not done personally, but I think some of my friends actually submitted the letters to the editor and actually got published. So
the difficulty, the trick is in writing something that doesn't make you look like an idiot. Because you can do a lot of damage as well as a lot of good. So if you write to somebody about how you think it's really blue fairies that do this, then they're going to go, yeah, right. Okay, they may well publish it, but that's not always a good thing. We've also got there are quite a few rapid publication things now, where it's very rapid to publish, but the cost is that you get it published alongside the reviewer's report. You need nerves of steel to do that. One of my students said, I could publish there. I said, well, you could. I don't think I would, if I were you. With me, I would, but then I'm less likely to do the silly things. But getting things published, little things. Student BMJ is as good a place to start as any.
So from a researcher's point of view, we encourage students to get involved in this smaller scale
I would encourage people to get involved in small scale stuff, but I'd also, there is a point where you stop doing the tiny stuff and you want to be part of a bigger project. You don't want to be known as that person who's done 97 small projects. You know, you want to make sure there's some sort of progression that's going to take you forward.
What's the process of going through the AFP, the Academic Foundation Program? I was wondering if you know anything about it.
Well, I mean, it varies every year, and it depends where you're interested in. The best thing to do is talk to the careers advisor, Chris Waterloo. Just actually, I'll probably start talking to her about now for next year. Most people on the AFP are intercalators. They're people who are intercalating, and certainly I've encouraged so I've got 2 that are going for it now. And I encourage them to actually talk with the people they wanted to go and work with well ahead. And it's that thing about being known. You know, say, I've always had a burning desire to do, to be on the Surgical Academic Foundation program. Really, why is it the first time that I see you today? Yeah? Whereas if you can say, "Oh, it's me again. Oh, how's it going?" That's fine. So I'm thinking of going for the AFP. That's okay. Do it. And you literally have that conversation. It needs to be. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd say the same that we said at the intercalating evening. I'd say the same for the AFP. That if it's something you really want to do, then do it. If it's something that you think will give you better employment prospects in the future, that's not the right answer. It's got to be something that you really, really want to do, because there are some, you know, it's a very, very steep hill to climb. It's terrific when you're there, and it's terrific climbing it, but actually, you know, has its downtimes.
Do you think it would be like a good idea to say, for someone who wants to be very much involved in the research side of academic medicine, as well as being a clinical practitioner, do you think it would be a good idea to do the AFP program and then say 2 years in a PhD or something like that after the AFP program?
Well, the rules seem to be changing. I think PhDs are becoming much more the norm. But there is actually a real question as to whether you do that as a part-time PhD over a long period of time. You actually take time out. And I've got a colleague that took time out to do his PhD, but has actually found it effectively impossible to get into a substantive clinical post. And he's sort of sitting at that phase now, thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get into my clinical post. Good PhD, and he's a good clinician, but he just can't get out of the box. I've got another, in fact, one of my students. She's in China, and she's actually being paid to do a PhD with me part-time while she's actually Director of Public Health in one of the large provinces in the south of China. And so she's being paid to do a PhD with me part-time while she's doing a substantive job there. You've got to have the right personality for that, though, because doing a PhD part-time while you're holding down a real job is brutal. I mean, it's an honoured tradition, but it's brutal. I did one of my doctorates. This sounds terrible, really. Did one of my doctorates as a full-time student, and the other one as a part-time student. I enjoyed the one as a part-time student more, but it was hard. It was rock hard. But I survived it. I'm still married. It's amazing.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
How did she manage that, getting paid for doing a PhD part-time in the country?
Very good at her job. She had a very clear idea. I mean, that's it, actually. She was very good at her job. She had a very clear idea of what she wanted to do. She made the case to her boss, and the boss said, do you know? Yeah, go on then. From his point of view, he didn't lose her, because her fees are $16,000 a year because she's an overseas student. But he didn't have to retrain anybody, he didn't lose anybody, and she was going to be retained and happy about her job, so he just made the proposal. But it does help if you're good to do that. It's no good being a rubbish person and trying it. Anything else? Is that me done?
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I shall move on. Thank you very much. In the vain hope that I will never lose enough weight to get into my mess kit by March. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you, guys. Good to see you. Take care.
See you. Take care. Right, now we're just going to have our lunch break, so stay tuned and we'll be back in, say, 40 minutes.